Actually, I just listened to the music. That would be fine. So, here's how it went down in my scheduled fight with Ian Singer when I was 12 years old at the end of 7th grade. The place was Phelps Park in Teaneck, New Jersey, 4 blocks from my house. The year was, and the time was June 12th, 1967. And at the appointed place and time, Singer and I both showed up. We saw that the referee that we had arranged to referee the event was there. We got ready to fight. What it was that Singer had been tormenting me throughout 7th grade. And by the end of that school year, I had it. I think one thing that sort of pushed us down the road to this encounter was the fact that we were both on the short side. We were 12-year-old boys. We were starting to be interested in girls, and boys of that age tend to assess their social standing kind of along the lines of how manly they appear. And back then, I had not yet even achieved my commanding height of 5 feet 7.5 inches. And I like to think that Singer was a good half-inch shorter than I was. On top of that, I was not what you could call an early adopter of body hair. I was a skinny kid. I was kind of scrawny, more so than Singer, but even so, both of us were on the same low level of the social scale. And then on top of that, we both like to think of ourselves as witty. I had recently come out of my shell, and I like to try to make kids laugh. Singer was clever, although his cleverness defaulted more in the direction of mockery and sarcasm. I can't tell you exactly what insults he aimed at me during that year, but I do remember really coming to resent the fact that he would repeatedly put me down in front of a group of people, like mutual friends, classmates, in the lunchroom. And so at the end of the year, I called him out and I said, we have to do this thing. We were surprisingly formal about it. I mean, we set a place and time in advance. As I say, we arranged to have a referee. It was like we were Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr, setting up like a duel or something. The referee that we chose was Chucky Oriole, a friend of mine since 3rd grade. I was a little sorry to realize that he had also befriended Ian Singer, but that made him the natural choice. And as we got ready to throw down, Singer and I, we took our shirts off because it was a warm evening, and then, trust me, you would have seen an impressive bit of scrawn from yours truly. Chucky officiated mainly by wringing his hands and saying, "Really, guys, do you have to do this?" But we were grimly determined to do it, and as we got underway, we ended up, I'm sure entirely unintentionally, basically reenacting what I think is the best scene from Akira Kurosawa's masterful film, Rashomon. And for those of you who may need a reminder what that was about, this is a period Japanese film. It involves an encounter in the forest between a married couple and a bandit. The husband has a sword and the bandit has a sword. The bandit, masterfully played by Toshiro Mifune. The film interweaves interesting themes like insecurity, a rumination on whether human nature is inherently good or bad, desire, sensuality, violence. The bandit ends up tying up the husband with rope, and there's a strong suggestion that there's a serious sexual assault of the wife, although that happens off screen. And it also explores ambiguity because the film is basically 4 different versions of how the encounter in the forest went down. The bandit's version is a big sword fight and the bandit wins and kills the husband. The wife's version picks up when the bandit has left and she's begging the husband for forgiveness, and he looks at her with such cold disdain that she can't bear it. She takes a knife and she wants to kill herself, and she only fails at that because she faints. The dead husband's version, which we hear through a spirit medium, is that he sees that the wife wants to go off with the bandit, and he ends up alone in a grove in the forest, so filled with despair that he takes a knife and kills himself. But it is the final version, the woodcutter's version, that I think is the most compelling. The woodcutter has seen everything, and he describes, and we see a sword fight between the two men that is unlike any sword fight that you'll ever see on film. They really don't want to fight, but they're provoked to do it by the wife, who suggests that they're cowards if they don't. And so as they start to engage and they fight, so terrified are they of each other that they're constantly tripping over rocks and trees and leaves and falling down and dropping their swords, and it's a mad scramble. And somehow it just has like the ring of truth that you never see in like a swashbuckling battle in any other example of film. And this is pretty much how it went down with me and Singer. We swung at each other mightily, real haymakers that, had they connected, would have caused not just unconsciousness, but probably headlessness. But so terrified were we of each other and of getting hit that the most that would ever happen was that a fist would occasionally whiz by a face, just grazing the tip of a nose, doing absolutely no harm. And it went on like this for a while till Singer and I were both panting with exhaustion from the fear, from the adrenaline, and we knew that now the fight was over. And it was at that point that I realized that if I hurried home, I could just catch the beginning of a televised event that I really wanted to see, something that happened only like once a year. And in those days before, before VCRs, it was actually, I think my parents' VCR was probably broken in the basement. I had to watch it live. I had to watch it when it was broadcast. Well, actually, I didn't, I said, guys, are we done now? I don't remember if I told them what it was I wanted to get home to see, but the fact is that June 12th, 1967, was the air date for Charlie Brown's summer special, You're in Love, Charlie Brown. And for those of you who need to remember what that was about, this is when Charlie Brown struggles mightily with himself to actually talk to the little red-haired girl and tell her how much he likes her. And although he has really good support from his allies, Linus and Peppermint Patty, every time he comes close to the little red-haired girl, he's so paralyzed with fear that he can't speak. So this is basically how I ended that evening. By walking home really quickly, I got to see the beginning and the whole program. And by the way, the program ends with kind of a surprising twist and a hopeful kind of feeling. And come to think of it, so does, in its way, the movie Rashomon. Now, I realize that this account of my fight that evening in Phelps Park with Ian Singer doesn't have absolutely all of the elements of a classic standing up to a bully scene that you might see in the movies. But it did achieve two things, that fight. For one thing, having experienced that, I find myself uniquely able to see some interesting parallels between Rashomon and You're in Love, Charlie Brown. And for another thing, after that fight, I never again got any flack from Ian Singer, a result that makes me think that we may just end up being rewarded for even the most modest attempt to confront our demons. Thank you.